All right. Good morning, guys. It's about a half minute before the start time. So I'm going to go ahead and do the intro for you guys. This is session L087 about Strong Start 2020. Just to make sure you're in the right place. I want to thank you guys for joining the 2020 Teacher Leaders Summit virtual series for the Louisiana Department of Ed. My name's Sharon Del Visco, but my name on the screen is LDOE host. If you need to send me a message in the chat, you can send it to LDOE host. If you have any issues with your internet connection during the session on your end, just log out and log right back in. You'll get right back into the meeting room. And that's it. I'm going to turn the session over to Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. I'm assuming you can hear me. I see my little green light flashing here. Thanks for attending our first virtual Teacher Leader Summit. I know this is a first for me, and I'm assuming it's a first for all of you. So we're excited to be able to continue with the summit during these unprecedented times, and thank you all for being here. So the title of this session is Strong Start 2020, Supporting Students with Disabilities and Continuous Learning. Again, we're glad that y'all were able to come. And we're going to focus this session on some planning priorities so that we can make sure that we start our fall 2020 school year strong together. Here's just a quick look at the agenda for today, and then just some little logistics there about audio. Again, it's really helpful if you're not speaking just to be on mute. If you have chat questions that you want to send to our moderator co-host, that's LDOE host. And so just kind of use that. And then the sessions are also being recorded, so they will be posted afterwards. So today we're going to start by looking at Louisiana's Strong Start 2020 plan for all students. And then we're just going to take a closer look at how to build ways to support students with disabilities in your school system's Strong Start plan. Strong Start 2020 guidance includes indicators for special education focused on access to high quality instruction and Tier 1 curriculum, continued delivery of services, and assistive technology. It also includes indicators for a plan for providing compensatory service reviews and then implementing those services based on students' individual needs. We're going to round out the session by just sharing some next steps on things we can do to start planning now, and then on other ways that we'll be able to share ideas and collect feedback on the implementations and supports of this Strong Start plan. Since school systems first closed in response to COVID, school systems and the department have worked closely together on providing all students access to continuous learning while remaining safely at home. So in anticipation of possible school facility closures, modified operations, intermittent closures, the department is focused on ensuring that school systems are prepared for a strong start to the 2020 academic year. And our top priority is resuming school in a manner that's safe and responsive to the needs of students. We know that this is going to involve challenges, and we know that school systems planning has to be adaptive so that it can evolve as the circumstances do. As we move beyond kind of this stage of crisis management to more purposeful planning, we're going to look to the successes and challenges of the emergency online teaching we all just experienced. We can learn from these experiences and help use those lessons to plan actions and supports that'll minimize the impact to learning from the 2019 school year and improve what we offer students in the 2020 school year. As school systems plan for a strong start, the department does continue to add and revise its suite of resources to assist school systems with this planning. School systems 2020-2021 plans submitted to the department through the Super App process already outline a coherent academic foundation. These plans include use of high-quality curricula, assessments, and teacher development. It's this foundation that we're going to build on to provide support for students with disabilities through continuous learning. So we know that teachers and students will have the greatest success when strong start plans for students with disabilities build from the instructional plan that's in place for all students. Rather than turning to new instructional materials, school systems should continue to use the high-quality curriculum with embedded supports while providing the additional services based on students' individual education programs that are designed to meet their unique needs. When planning for a strong start, school systems must also continue to provide special education and related services, including accommodations and access to core curriculum materials. School systems must plan how supports, services, and accommodations will be delivered in a continuous learning environment to support students with disabilities in accessing high-quality instruction and instructional materials. Students with disabilities have many specific needs to consider. So to assist school systems, the department has created a suite of resources to focus planning priorities. This planning will help schools meet the unique needs of students with disabilities through continuous learning plans. The Strong Start 2020 resources can be found on our Louisiana Believes webpage with this icon, Strong Start 2020, like you see on the screen. We also have resources specific to students with disabilities, which are located in our Students with Disabilities resource library. I've included a screenshot here just to make that easier to locate on our site. We know that a strong start for our most vulnerable population of students means that we have to build on these resources to create and maintain a learning environment that's accessible and develops student skills so they can make educational progress. We're going to take a minute here to do our first poll question. My co-host is going to pop that up. And we just want to know from you all in the audience, have you accessed the Strong Start 2020 guidance? I just talked a lot about that being the new guidance that's out, where you can find that. We just want to know who's actually seen it already. And if you haven't, definitely we're going to point you in that direction as we start planning for fall 2020. So there are a lot of you in the room. I don't know that we'll wait for everyone to respond, but let's just take a look at the results here. So it looks like 42% of you responded that you have accessed the Strong Start 2020 guidance. And so some of the screenshots you'll see as we go through this webinar will be familiar. 58% of you who responded, and it was about 300 responses, responded that you have not yet seen this Strong Start guidance. So hopefully after you sit through this session, you'll go take a look at that. That will help you with your school system plans for fall of 2020. All right, so now we want to move into the specific things from the Strong Start planning guidance that help support students with disabilities and continuous learning. Right, we know that school systems have to find ways to serve all students, even during times of disruption from continuous learning, which is requiring our students to now connect from home. The past few months have provided us all opportunities to assess what works and what does not work with continuous learning. Given that school systems could not reasonably have expected to plan for the abrupt closure of school facilities, we know that everyone did the best they could with the resources available to ensure students continue to learn. And as school systems work on a long-term response, school systems are preparing for possible intermittent closures next year and planning for continuity of learning, including continued services for students with disabilities. School systems need to make the most of the summer months to prepare schools, educators, students, and families to have the resources and training they need to succeed next year. So how are we going to strategically use the resources we have to continue to improve outcomes for students with disabilities in continuous learning environments. The Strong Start 2020 guidance provides information on how to do this and resources that support early childhood providers, school systems, educators, and families to ensure there is a plan for every student. This guide helps school systems plan priorities and align funding for all students, including students with diverse needs. A strong start begins with school systems creating strong yet agile continuous education plans that provide standards-aligned instruction using high-quality curriculum during modified operations. These will include provisions for one-to-one device and internet access, including assistive technology for students with disabilities. Continuous education plans will include a strategic communications plan to connect with every student on a daily basis, provide weekly feedback on students' work, and communicate a family's role in supporting their child's continuous learning. Plans will include versatile delivery methods for instruction, related services, and professional development. School systems will plan adaptive staffing models that enable feedback on student work and frequent communication with students and families. And continuous education planning will include flexible and opportunistic calendars and school schedules that will maximize learning opportunities in this dynamic public health context. In support of this planning that school systems will do to incorporate these new priorities for a successful school year, the Strong Start 2020 Planning Guide includes a section specifically for the planning priorities for students with disabilities. And that's the section that we're going to take a closer look at and examine those priorities through our webinar today. So as we look ahead to this first priority in the Strong Start guidance, we learn that planning is focused on helping school systems ensure that students with disabilities continue to receive high quality instruction and related services. School systems must also have plans in place that ensure students with disabilities continue to have access to devices that meet their needs and enable them to participate in high quality instruction. I want you all to just take a moment to think about this question. How is your school system planning to ensure that all students with disabilities receive instruction and related services? So this section of the presentation will break these priorities out into 3 parts. First, we'll take a look at continued services for students with disabilities. Then we'll take a look at access and utilization of assistive technology and adaptive equipment, and then accessible instructional materials for students with disabilities. So all students, including students with disabilities, should be provided equitable access to engage in high quality instruction during periods of continuous learning. Many school systems have started planning for the fall by reflecting on their end-of-year experiences with remote instruction so that they can begin implementing plans over the coming months. As school systems plan, how are they focusing on supporting students with disabilities in continuous learning? I'm going to pause after posing each of the following questions to allow everyone just to take a minute to reflect, write down if you have pen and paper handy, or just kind of think about how your school system planning and prioritizing includes supports for students with disabilities in your schools. So how do we ensure students with disabilities, including students with significant cognitive disabilities, can access instruction, engage in services, and make progress towards IEP goals if there are school facility closures and/or modified operations? How do we ensure access and support for students to utilize assistive technology and adaptive equipment for engagement and instruction in continuous learning environments? And how do we provide materials in accessible formats for continuous learning? We may not all have the answers to these questions right now, but our Strong Start plans should work to address these. The most successful plans to address continued services, assistive technology needs, and accessibility of instructional materials will likely include feedback from students, families, and educators. Successful plans will also build on the plans we already have in place to educate all students. So we know that serving students with disabilities requires careful planning to ensure their unique needs are met through implementation of continuous learning. As we conclude the 2019-2020 school year, school systems can reflect on lessons learned and begin to assess the need and execute on plans to provide professional development for related service providers. Successful Strong Start plans must include strategies to provide high-quality direct service delivery to students with disabilities. Providers may need to remotely deliver services as part of a hybrid delivery model during intermittent school facility closures, or in instances when students may not be able to safely return to school buildings. Strong Start plans will need to provide for training to direct service providers so they have the skills they need to effectively continue to deliver services in continuous learning environments. School systems can use our Partnerships for Success Guide as a resource to help secure professional development from organizations that have been vetted by the department. These organizations tailor training to the tools, services, and content school systems already use, right? We want to build on the plans that we have in place. This guide has been recently updated to include a CL symbol, like the one shown on the top of this slide. That CL stands for continuous learning. This symbol will help school systems easily locate organizations in the Partnerships for Success Guide who provide professional development services to service providers delivering services remotely. So we reached out to some of the vendors from this guide, and we wanted to include some examples of what professional development for online service delivery might entail. The Public Consulting Group, or PCG, provided information for us to share about the professional development they offer to direct service providers. So we wanted to share this with school systems as you build plans to train your service providers to prepare them with the skills they need to continue to provide high-quality services to students with disabilities in the continuous learning environments kids are learning in. So PCG designed both professional development and a delivery platform called Playbook. They blend the professional development with this platform to provide service providers access to resources, peer experts, and coaches. We also have another example of what professional development for service providers might look like. This is from a different partner in our Partnerships for Success Guide, Catapult Learning. They share that their organization provides professional development focused on technology use. They offer Zoom 101, a series on using Google Classroom, and some helpful things in training for student engagement. They deliver their training through virtual workshops, job-embedded virtual coaching, and virtual instructional coaching in institutes. To learn more about the types of professional development available through vendors in our Partnerships for Success Guide, look for those organizations again with that CL symbol, like the one on the top of this slide. That stands for continuous learning. All right, we're gonna do our second poll question here. Does your school system plan to provide professional development to service providers on service delivery strategies in continuous learning environments? So we just want to get a pulse for school systems that have started their planning, which I think most, if not all of you have, and whether or not those plans are going to include professional development so that services can continue for students with disabilities in the continuous learning environment. We know that everybody did services in the spring. They'll continue in the fall. We're just trying to get a feel for professional development plans here. All right, it looks like of the 450 people, a little over half have responded already. And 54% of you said yes, we are planning to provide professional development to related service providers. 3% said no, and another 43% said maybe. All right, so what resources do we have available to help a school system support the delivery of related services during continuous learning? So we looked at 2 of our vendors from our Partnerships for Success guide. We also have additional resources available, which include our direct services guide that provides steps for delivery of related services remotely. We have a virtual small group instruction guidance that helps service providers ensure that they protect student information during remote delivery of small group sessions, right? We know that IEPs have small group instruction in them, and so we want to make sure that we have some guidance about how we protect personally identifiable information. We also have staffing guidance. This outlines how school systems can use your current staff in novel ways to make sure we continue to provide special education and related services for students with disabilities. And then we have a sample individual contingency plan for continuous learning. This document serves as an example just to help school systems have a place to plan to start. School systems can modify this, and it's designed to address student educational needs while participating in remote delivery and instruction. Right, we should start incorporating in our IEP processes individual contingency plans for continuous learning. All right, so we just took a look at how Strong Start plans prioritize delivery of related services for students with disabilities through continuous learning. Now we're going to take a look at how we respond to the priority for students with disabilities through planning for access and effective use of assistive technology and adaptive equipment. So again, I want you just to take a moment to think about how your school system is planning for students to have access to devices that meet their unique needs and enable them to participate in this new learning environment. All right, to ensure related services are provided through continuous learning, school systems are increasingly integrating assistive technology tools and remote service delivery. For students with disabilities to meaningfully engage with high quality instruction during continuous learning, school systems must build plans that ensure students have access to assistive technology and adaptive equipment. To plan for these priorities, school systems may need to start by reassessing student support needs focused on the demands of continuous learning. School systems should build on the lessons learned during service delivery in the spring. This will help schools better understand what technology and equipment a student needs to be successful while participating in remote instruction. Once school systems know how to address student assistive technology needs, and they ensure the student has access to the needed devices, right? There needs to be some training for both the student and the teachers. Training on the device will ensure it's effectively utilized. So school system Strong Start plans should include a review of the appropriate technology needed to address student challenges in continuous learning environments, and the training that'll be needed so that that technology is utilized effectively. So assistive technology helps students access grade level content, and it allows them to be independent. We want to make sure we're matching students' needs to assistive technology in the context of continuous learning, which may mean we need to reassess their needs in this environment. The activities we are asking students to complete have changed, and so is their learning environment. Given these changes, students' strengths and challenges may also look different in continuous learning. To match students' current needs to the right high-tech and low-tech tools, school systems need to possibly reassess the task demands and student needs in this new environment. School systems should begin assessing needs by looking at the activities, assignments, and skills needed for remote learning. We need to understand what students are good at in this new way of learning and what challenges they now face. When we understand these things in the context of continuous learning environments, we can select the appropriate devices, software, and tools to ensure students are accessing learning through remote delivery of instruction and related services. So assistive technology, we know, can support students with disabilities in accessing high quality instruction. And it can also help by solving challenges students face in continuous learning. Here are a few ways related service providers can use assistive technology and tools to continue providing services that meet individual needs of students through remote delivery of services. Students are most successful if you start with the technology and equipment they currently use in the classroom and that you know already works. If a student has a communication device, adaptive paper, special seating, we want to make sure those assistive technology and adaptive equipment are available to the student in their remote learning or home setting. And we want to make sure that they're as effective in this new setting as they were in the classroom. Because the environments and the task demands change during continuous learning, we may also need to look to more innovative approaches to solve these new challenges that we're facing. This slide includes some challenges paired with assistive technology or adaptive equipment supports to address each challenge. We gathered many examples from educators in Louisiana and other states to see what's possible for students with disabilities. So one Louisiana teacher shared that he started using smart pens to help students immediately capture their thoughts during instruction. He shared that students who struggle to write but were able to quickly capture thoughts verbally during instruction were able to provide more complete ideas in their writing assignments. To address students' career training needs or transition goals, other states are using virtual reality and educational apps to adapt for career pathways in the arts and healthcare. Virtual reality helps provide students with hands-on training while learning from home. It also can help with role play to practice interview skills. A school for students with autism is using virtual reality devices in a different way. They're using them to help students build and maintain friendships and attend field trips during a time of social distancing. And we have another Louisiana teacher example. A high school teacher shared that she uses secure social media platforms to help her students organize friend groups and stay connected while having to remain at home. These are just a few examples that we wanted to provide of some ways that Louisiana educators are using assistive technology to support students with disabilities in continuous learning environments. There are many more ways that we know you all are supporting students. And so we just wanted to make sure that we shared a few here. So we have our next set of poll questions. These ones kind of build on each other. The first one here is, did your students effectively use assistive technology during continuous learning? So yes, no, or it was not needed. Did your students effectively use assistive technology during continuous learning? All right, it looks like definitely more than half of everyone has replied here. So let's take a look. It looks like 37% of you said yes, your students did effectively use assistive technology. 43% said no, and another 20% said it was not needed. All right, so let's take a look at this second poll question here. This is on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 meaning strongly disagree, 4 meaning strongly agree. Assistive technology for students has improved access to high quality instruction during continuous learning. The polling responses right now are trending towards a 3, but they definitely fall across the spectrum here. Again, we'll kind of wait till we see about half the responses come through. All right, so for those of you who had students who used assistive technology, 40% of you gave it a 3, that it did help improve access to high quality instruction. Another 22% said 4. So the majority looks like, you know, when assistive technology was used, it did improve access to instruction. And then 37% were 2 or below. All right, and the third polling question here is, does your staff or students continue to need training to use assistive technology effectively during continuous learning? So we know, right, some students had access to it, some students effectively used it. We know that when we did see it get used, right, it helped access instruction. How many still feel like we need some more training? And this so far is an overwhelming yes. So we have 87% of respondents said, yes, we need more training here. 5% said no, and 8% said maybe. All right, so we want to make sure that everybody knows what resources we currently have available to help with planning for assistive technology. Again, we have organizations in our Partnerships for Success guide who do provide professional development to support implementation of assistive technology. So school systems looking for that can, again, reach out to our Partnerships for Success guide. Those organizations have been vetted by the department. And then school systems can also reach out to Louisiana's Accessible Educational Materials and Assistive Technology Center. This center makes it really easy to make a service request, and we provided a link here on this slide. And so you just click on that and you can make a request to reach out to the experts who work there with accessible educational materials and assistive technology. All right, so we took a look at our Strong Start plans and the priorities for delivering related services, priority for accessing and utilizing effectively assistive technology and adaptive equipment. Now we're going to take a look at how we respond to the Strong Start planning priority for students with disabilities through planning and adapting instructional materials to make them accessible for students. So again, just take a little moment here to think about how your school system will continue to provide students with disabilities access to high quality instructional materials during continued learning. So we're going to take a look at some strategies that can help support school systems planning to focus and execute on this priority and make those instructional materials that we use more accessible for students with disabilities and continuous learning. All right, so again, in addition to the access to assistive technology, right, we know that students with disabilities also need accessible instructional materials, and they need accessible instructional delivery methods. So we're going to look at how to make materials accessible in this section and how to make our instructional delivery more accessible for students with disabilities. So what actions should school systems include in their Strong Start plans to ensure that high quality instructional materials and delivery of instruction are accessible? School systems should continue, right, always continue using the high quality materials that you have, the assessment resources, and interventions. And then you want to look to our Strong Start instructional materials guidance to help get some more information and resources on how to make these materials accessible. The school system should also facilitate collaboration to ensure effective delivery of appropriate supports and accommodations are provided to students with disabilities and continuous learning, right? We want to make sure our special ed and our general ed teachers are working together on this so that we get students with disabilities the accommodations and accessibility that they need. School systems should also gather feedback from stakeholders. Figuring out what works and what didn't work can help plan and inform our planning to help us improve accessibility of high quality instructional materials as we look towards fall of 2020 and remote instruction. All right, we have some examples here of actions that school systems should include in their Strong Start plans to ensure access to high quality instructional materials for students with disabilities. Right, school systems should continue to use the same high quality curriculum provided by our Tier 1 publishers. An example of high quality curriculum materials would be ELA guidebooks, which already include embedded supports. School systems should start with these materials and then use our Strong Start instructional materials guidance to provide enhanced accessibility to these materials. This guidance it includes accessibility options such as digital text, accessible book formats from Bookshare, and it also includes options for Braille or enlarged print that are provided through our Louisiana AEM Center. School systems can further support the implementation of accessibility features of high quality curriculum through training and practice for both educators and students before and during continuous learning. We know it takes a lot to plan for continuous learning, and so we want to make sure that we're practicing those plans and those skills, especially in times when we can be together, so that when we can't, we're as independent as possible. So in addition to using updated accessibility guidance from curriculum providers, educators may need to further enhance the delivery of supports and accommodations that often ensure accessibility, right? So making what we have accessible through the guidance we have may also then require a little more work and planning for our students with disabilities, especially those with significant cognitive disabilities. So when we adapt that current curriculum to our new continuous learning, right, we're going to make sure that we provide the additional supports for the students who need it. We've learned that continuous learning tends to be a little more heavy on reading and writing. So our examples here include some reading and writing examples of where we may need to enhance those supports for students. Because we know, right, the accessibility guidance from the curriculum publishers, providers alone probably isn't going to address all students' unique needs. And so let's take a look at kind of what typically we're used to giving in terms of accommodations in traditional classrooms, and then some examples of how these may need to be enhanced to provide students access to instructional materials for continuous learning. Right, so to provide reading support in a traditional classroom, teachers were utilizing small group read alouds, peer tutors, teacher and peer modeling, in-person support to build background knowledge. But when we adapt this to continuous learning environments, teachers may need to adjust the approach and spend more time planning for these remote supports than they're used to, because when you're in the classroom, right, you can sometimes provide those supports spontaneously during in-person instruction. So teachers need to spend more time recording texts, embedding audio in assignments, and providing supported text to build the background knowledge students will need to be more independent in remote learning settings. We also have writing supports that might now include screencasts, digital videos. We're commenting on documents, which has replaced our real-time feedback to students. So teachers were used to providing these writing supports maybe while circulating classrooms, popping in and out of small group work, right? But now we have to plan ahead. Sometimes we even have to schedule meetings to do editing and revision sessions that we deliver through video conferencing or phone. But all these strategies are important to ensure that the students continue to receive the supports needed so that they can succeed in this new learning environment. Additional accessibility features beyond that provided by the Strong Start instructional materials guidance may also be required to adequately support students with disabilities. Educators can help ensure instructional documents are accessible regardless of the document format, right? We work in Google Docs, Microsoft Word, Adobe. And so educators can start using headings, lists, and meaningful hyperlinks to make these documents more accessible in digital formats. We can add alternate text to images, identify document language, make sure the tables we use are chosen with intent, and that teachers understand how to export from one format to another. I found that the University of Washington provides a wide variety of tools to students, faculty, and staff on creating accessible documents in an electronic format. It's a great place to start to learn the basic skills needed to assure documents and presentations you create are accessible by all students with disabilities. So I've included a link to this information on the bottom of the slide for those of you who just want to make sure you jump into the basics of accessible digital documents. Another place to start with kind of the basics is that most software itself has accessibility checkers in it. And this makes it really easy to do an initial accessibility check on text structure. So for example, Microsoft Office files are accessible. Educators can use that built-in accessibility checker. And it's a free tool that's available inside of Word documents, Excel, PowerPoint. Again, Adobe has it. What it does is it finds most accessibility issues. It'll explain why each might be a potential problem for someone with a disability. So you can decide if you're going to make that change or not in your digital document. And then it'll offer that suggestion for you to resolve the issue. I find that most accessibility checkers catch most types of accessibility issues, but there are some that they're not able to detect. And so you always want to make sure that you review the work visually and just try to fix as many things as you can after you use those checkers. But again, it's a great place to start, especially if you're new to making accessible digital documents. All right, so we know that most schools right now provide some level of video instruction alongside accessible educational materials. So effective instructional video delivery strategies can also help ensure students with disabilities have continued access to high quality instruction. Teachers have been delivering instruction through continuous learning videos that we kind of categorized here as instructional or educational videos and then interactive videos. Instructional or educational videos include mostly recorded videos, kind of like this session, where the student is asked to watch something and given lots of information in a lecture type format. The student may or may not take notes. They may or may not complete an activity when they're finished. Some of the best examples of these educational or lecture type videos I found were produced by a group called Crash Course. If you guys want to look at some more examples of what we mean when we say educational or instructional type videos. And then there's another type of video. These videos are more interactive because they include features that increase students' level of interaction with the video. And they require students to actively process information presented in the video. So they really employ a strategy of balancing the visual input students get with the auditory input students get and move between those two modes of learning, again, to increase retention of information, to increase transfer of information. So regardless of which type of video you're using, there are effective delivery strategies that ensure students with disabilities are supported through these videos. Information in videos, right? We can highlight it through color, text explanation. If there's an object in there, we can overlay text to give a further explanation of an object or a symbol. We can use keywords to organize relationships or emphasize concepts. Information in instructional videos, it can also be chunked. And we can chunk it through the use of very brief clips. We can split videos into chapters. We can add skip functions for students. And my personal favorite for students with disabilities is the rewatch feature. So that if you felt like you missed something, you can hit rewatch and go back and listen to it. And it's easier for chunking things into chapters or sections so that when we do hit rewatch or we go back, it's just through that section that we missed or we needed to hear again. So to expand upon providing educational or instructional videos, educators also want to consider providing these interactive forms of videos and visuals that blend instruction with engagement. These strategies provide students with disabilities additional opportunities to access high quality instruction and materials. Most interactive lessons, they'll include questions that are embedded in the video, or they'll include a click forward feature so that students engage with smaller amounts of information at a time. And the click forward feature, it has the video stop so that the student has to click to move the video forward, which allows the students to control the pacing of the content. Interactive videos will have opportunities for immediate feedback and embedded supports like question hints and/or explanations of how to solve problems or complete a task. And these are important to ensuring videos are more accessible to students with disabilities, because we don't know if they're doing this independently or if they have any type of assistance at home. And so we want to make sure we're building in those features that help reduce frustration and allow them to access the same high quality instruction as their peers. Another thing we've learned that kids love is including humor. They like it when there's some sort of positive reinforcements, like I get a question right and I get a song. All of these things will increase engagement in the lessons. And if you're interested in seeing some kind of more examples of this interactive video, PBS has put some interactive things out there. Khan Academy does. Those are some examples of places where you might go and look. One exercise that I found really helpful is to go check out a bunch of different types and then make a list of what features I see being used in them, and then how those might translate to the students that I work with. In addition, some of the information from this slide came from Vanderbilt. They do offer a guide to creating effective educational videos, and the guide is about intentionally using design strategies in your videos to increase accessibility and engagement. All right, so we have another poll here. We know that shorter segments of videos with some interaction keeps us all engaged. So your question here is, have you accessed the Strong Start instructional materials guidance? All right, it looks like over half of you have responded. 30% of you said yes, I've accessed that guidance, and 70% of you have said no. So again, you definitely want to start there with making your curriculum accessible to students. Again, start with what we use for all students, and then add in those supports that we know we need for students with disabilities. Take a look at our next poll question. Do you currently use or plan to create educational videos to provide continuous learning to students with disabilities? So do you use them or do you plan to use them? All right, it looks like about 50% of you have voted. And 70% say yes, I use them or I plan to, 3% say no, and another 27% of you say maybe. And then our last poll question here, if I was in person, I would probably just ask, what do you plan to take from remote instruction back to your classrooms? But I can't ask open-ended questions in this format. So you guys are getting, will you create and use educational or interactive videos in your classroom when you return to your school buildings? So we had some experience with them now. Hopefully we'll get some training and we'll be better at them in the fall. But if we return back to the classrooms, is this something we want to continue using? Again, more than half of you voted. 76% of you said yes, you will take this strategy back to your classroom. 2% say no, and another 22% of you are unsure if you will or not. All right, so what resources do we have available for school systems to plan for accessible instructional materials? The department, again, has developed the Strong Start instructional material guidance, right? And then we also have developed an accessibility of instructional materials guidance. These resources will help you continue to prioritize the use of high quality core instructional materials for all students, while also providing some flexibility based on student need. Right? It's critical, though, that these materials are provided in a manner that allows students with disabilities the same level of access to high quality instructional materials as their peers. And we also have to make sure we don't forget, it's not just the materials that need to be accessible, it's the actual delivery of the instruction in those materials that we need to make accessible. Now that we've looked at how school systems can prioritize continued delivery of related services, access to assistive technology and accessible instructional materials to support students with disabilities during continuous learning, we're going to take a look at that second Strong Start priority for students with disabilities that'll help schools plan for the fall. And that planning resource includes an indicator that helps focus schools on prioritizing compensatory services. Successful Strong Start plans and SMART plans will include actions for schools to complete compensatory service reviews and provide these services to students who need them. So I want you to take a minute to think about how your school system is currently planning to complete these reviews for compensatory services and how you're planning to use that information from the review to determine compensatory service needs and then implement those services as soon as you can. All right, we definitely know that this sudden and unexpected shift to continuous learning has impacted education for all students, right? And this includes students with disabilities. School building closures led to a disruption in special education and related services because educators were only given a few days to prepare for remote instructional delivery. But as a result of that, right, our Strong Start plans must include plans to complete compensatory service reviews for all students with disabilities. These plans need to include actions school systems can take to provide compensatory services to eligible students based on their individual need. School systems should start taking action now to address compensatory services. And we can do this by reviewing data for all students with disabilities. Right? We probably have fourth quarter report cards. We did our progress reports for their IEPs. We can start looking at the data we have and start reviewing that to start determining the necessary compensatory services for those students who need these services. And then we got to provide those services as soon as we can to all the students we find eligible based on their individual need. I wanted to include this kind of high-level focus on compensatory services. One, it's a priority in our Strong Start planning, but we also want school systems to know that you should start taking actions now and reviewing your students' data, right? We can't wait until school starts to begin this planning process for compensatory services. We need to be ready to determine those services and provide those services as soon as we can. So Strong Start plans should include actions for conducting data reviews now so that school systems are ready to determine and deliver services again as soon as possible. We know that school systems need more support in this, so we will be releasing Strong Start Compensatory Services guidance early next week. So be on the lookout for this guidance. It's going to help you guys plan, start those reviews, determine services, and deliver those as soon as you can. In addition to the Strong Start Compensatory Service guidance, the department is going to be hosting a Strong Start 2020 Students with Disabilities work group. This group will meet for the first time on June 8th. The working group will discuss compensatory services at this first meeting. This working group is one of a handful being held in key priority areas of the Strong Start 2020 plan to provide space for school system leaders to share ideas and collect feedback on implementation. The learnings from the work group will assist the department in improving planning, communications, and implementation practices of the Strong Start 2020 plan. To prepare for this first work group, you should review the Strong Start resources for special education indicators and the compensatory service guidance, again, that we will be releasing early next week. If you have any questions about the session today, questions about the work group, questions about any of the resources, please reach out to specialeducation@la.gov. We can take any questions you have there, again, about the session, about the work group, about the resources that we shared. And so we just kind of want to take a moment to just sum up. It was a lot of information presented in a short amount of time. That school system Strong Start plans must ensure students with disabilities are provided access to services, access to assistive technology and adaptive equipment, and access to high quality instruction. Right? School systems should be supporting continued delivery of instruction and related services by providing professional development. School systems plans should support the implementation of assistive technology and adaptive equipment to ensure access to high quality instruction during continuous learning. We need to make sure students have access. We need to make sure that that technology is utilized effectively, and that will take some training for both students and teachers. And then school system plans should support continued use of high quality instructional materials in accessible formats, right? Those materials need to be accessible. The way we deliver instruction needs to be accessible. And lastly, we need to start planning for compensatory data reviews. That planning starts now. We want to determine the necessary services for the students who need it, and we need to be ready to provide those services. Again, to assist school systems, look for that upcoming Strong Start Compensatory Service guidance that will be released early next week, and it got a lot of questions and answers in there that'll help you navigate. And don't forget, June 8th, we have a work group that is going to focus on the topic of compensatory services, because we definitely recognize there needs to be some more assistance from the department and guidance from us on that. In closing, we just want to thank everybody for attending the session today. We know you guys have a lot of choices with your time, and we're glad you chose to spend it here. And you can leave feedback on this session using the Teacher Leader Summit app. It only takes about a minute. The feedback is really helpful for us to continue to improve virtual delivery of these sessions and workshops and share content and guidance. And so you can leave that feedback. If you go into the app, on the bottom right corner, there's a rate this. You want to click on that. A window will pop up, and you can choose a facial expression that just reflects your experience here. If you want to leave a comment, you're welcome to do that too, and then click Finalize to submit your feedback. Again, if you need anything in the meantime about this session or the work group, just email specialeducation@la.gov. Thanks again for attending today.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. That was a great session, full of information. We appreciate you providing it. There were a couple questions that people had in the chat box. Do you want me to read one or two of them to you?
Yeah, that would be great, because I'm sure my chat box to try to find them is going to be really long.
We had one that was, I am very concerned about the possibility of one-to-one device and internet access. I teach in a rural school environment. One of my students this year with disabilities is unable to have internet where her home is located. How is the Louisiana Department of Ed partnering with internet service providers to ensure those students in rural environments have access to internet?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so we do have resources in our COVID library on our Louisiana Believes website. Specific questions like that can also be sent to our COVID email address. And there's a team of people who work on issues exactly like the one you asked. And then the Strong Start plan, right? In that beginning, we shared that slide that said, hey, we're working on this for all students, and that the one-to-one access to devices and internet, right? That's a priority in the Strong Start plans. And so you definitely want to be working with your school level administration on how they're working through those plans to access additional funding sources that align to that priority, and will help get those devices and internet to school systems.
Okay. And we had several comments for you from the attendee who has their name as Miss Braille. I sent those to you.
Okay.
And I'm looking, I think we had another question. Will these modifications and accommodations be done by the SPED teacher or the regular ed teacher?
Yeah, so we kind of touched on that a little bit in one of the slides, right? We want to make sure that our school system's Strong Start plans definitely support schools and being able to collaborate, right? And so we really need the special education and the general education teacher working together. Your general education teacher has good command over that tier 1 core curriculum for students. And so they're a great source for the content. And we know that special education teachers are trained in accessibility and accommodations and supports. And so we need those two experts working together to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students with disabilities. So it's not an either or, it's a let's collaborate, let's work together, and let's make sure our school system plans that we have in place for a strong start include and encourage that collaboration through how those plans are structured.
Okay. The next one was how do we sign up for the work group?
That's a great question. Shoot an email at specialeducation@la.gov. And we can help navigate you through how to sign up for the work group. As I stand here, I'm not sure about the logistics on size of the work group or those kinds of things, but if you email specialeducation@la.gov, Ashley is really great, very quick at responding, and we'll get you an answer to that question.
Okay, that was all the questions I could find in the chat box. I'm sorry if I missed yours, but if I did miss your question, then you can email Rebecca at the email address she shared. And someone said they missed the results of the poll question number 3, so I'm going to share them real quick. If you guys don't have any other comments, then you can go ahead and sign out, but you're welcome to hang around for a couple minutes. Thank you
for attending. Sorry, it was not an interactive video more than the polling. But hope y'all got some really good information to start moving forward with those plans, executing and implementing them. And again, if you have questions, you can reach me at specialeducation@la.gov.
Someone wants the COVID email.
If you hang tight for just a second and let me adjust my screens here, I can put that up in the chat box. It just take me a minute to move these windows around. Let's see. Sharon, am I still sharing my screen, or are you?
You can share your screen.
Oh, I don't need to share it. I could just pop it in the chat box. I just didn't know as I switched here if y'all were seeing my screen or seeing something else.
Oh, you can stop sharing.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. There we go. Did that work? Let me go grab this COVID email address, and any non-special ed specific questions can go there.
We have another question. You said that we need to start collecting data for Comp Ed now. What data other than the report card data and progress report data should we use?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I have two responses there. One, we're going to release that compensatory guidance document early next week. So I would start by reading through that to see if it answers your questions. And then two, right, every school system, schools within a school system has their own set of data that they collect. We released guidance document timelines and IEP students with disabilities compliance guidance, in which we made some suggestions on data that should be collected while school buildings were closed. And so you definitely, if you were collecting that, you want to use that as well. And then there'll be some additional suggestions in the guidance that'll be released early next week. All right, so that, Sharon, do you want to just type this in the chat box? I can give you the COVID email address.
Yep, hang on, I'm ready.
It's LDOE COVID, COVID 19 support, SUPPORT at la.gov.
Okay, it's in the chat box for you guys.
Great.
Someone had a question about certificates. The Louisiana Department of Ed does not issue certificates for the virtual training series, but they recommended that you print out your Sketch app and use that as documentation for the sessions that you attended. All right.
All right.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Sharon.
Right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all again for attending.
Bye.